Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover. With me is John Barbin. Let's talk football.
All right, we're talking Chiefs Texans. As you can see by the thumbnail, I couldn't think of a good title other than the Chiefs doing the Chiefs thing.
That's what they've been doing all season.
Season long.
This isn't your like older brother's Chiefs, right? Of the high scoring, like this is the stranglehold on defense and score just enough, you know. But and it looks like they shouldn't win that many games, but it works every time.
Every single time. I mean, this was a carbon and we threaded the needle on this bet. We took the Chiefs to cover and the under, which sounds wrong, but it went literally exactly the way we thought it would go.
Well, and if you're listening and judging by some of our NFL views, you're not. If you're betting with Barbin, you crushed it yesterday because he went 3-0 in the picks, and I thought you were crazy for going under the low total of the Kansas City Houston game and then going over the highest total of the Washington Detroit thing. But you tune into our next episode for that one. But it's but great call on threading the needle. I mean, it's because like you said, this is right out of the Chiefs game plan, which is a really good defense, scoring just enough, you know, and it was a classic. It's a classic 2024 Chiefs game. This was.
Yep. All right. So, I mean, right out of the gate. So the stat line looks really weird for this game.
Yes, it does. So
the Texans outgained them 336 yards to 212.
Yep.
They outrushed them 149 to 50.
Yep.
A little bit more in passing. Time of possession, they had it by 7 minutes.
Yep.
Even their third down efficiency was way better, 10 of 17 versus 4 of 11.
And the turnovers also jumped out at me.
Well, none.
Zero for either team.
Right.
Zero. So when you hold a team, Kansas City, to 212 yards, and you yourself have 0 turnovers, and you win the time of possession, and you lose by more than one score, by 9.
Right. So then all of the hidden yards show up. 8 penalties for 82 yards against the Texans, 3 of them on personal fouls that were 15, 15, and 15. We'll discuss those in a minute.
Okay.
And then the Chiefs had 4 penalties for 29 yards, so relatively clean game there. So that's a 53-yard difference just in penalties.
Yeah.
Sack yards were a major difference, but that's already accounted for in the total yards, so we don't need to point that out, even though it was 8 for 58 on the Texans side, 3 for 15 on the Chiefs side. But then kick returns, 131 yards for the Chiefs, 67 for the Texans. So that's a 64-yard difference right there in kick returns.
That's a really good point. The average person, the average fan looking at the box score would just see the 336 to the 212, but the special team, you've always said it's a 3-part game, right? It's offense, three-part game, offense, defense, and special teams. And then so in a game that's this low scoring where there's no turnovers, the change in field position would be critical. And that's a really good point about the kickoff thing.
Yeah, and it was kind of obvious because the opening kick went so far, and then that idiot Boyd threw his helmet, tacked another 15 yards on. Actually, good for the Texans defense for holding him to 3 there. It was just for 3.
That opening. You mean the very opening thing?
Yeah, I thought it was a touchdown for sure.
That was the first thing that I had. One of the notes written was like, if this doesn't go Kansas City's way, then that's going to be the play of the game, like in the within the first 2 minutes. Because to get that field position and hold them for a field goal, that was a big deal.
And then Texans also missed 2 field goals, whereas
and an extra point, didn't they?
And an extra point. So that's 7 points left on the table. Chiefs were 3 for 3 on field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. So we got hidden yards here, points on special teams. Now, to be fair, one of those field goals sort of didn't matter. It was at the very, very end of the game. But as far as impactful field goals, man, when the extra point, I think ruined the Texans' chances of ever really being competitive in this game. That's the wrong way to say it. They killed their own momentum by missing that extra point. That mattered a lot.
It really did.
It throws the whole game off, because then if the Chiefs just get a field goal, now you have to answer with a touchdown. It changes everything.
It does. And if you're a Houston fan, right, and they come out in the third quarter and they have a dominant possession, right, long touchdown drive, and they score a touchdown, the first thing you're thinking is that we just tied it up. We tied it up, and this could go any way now. And then when you miss an extra, but it's just 1 point, but you're still down. You haven't tied it now, and that's a huge letdown. Everyone knows that. You're right about the field goal and stuff. All of a sudden, all these weird point spreads come into play now, right? Where it's like a field goal makes it 4 points, and yet you have to go for a touchdown.
So all of your decisions are different. Everything's different at that point.
If Kansas City gets a touchdown, now you have to get a touchdown and a 2-point convert. Like, it was all kinds of stuff happens there. So
that 1 point matters so much, and the missed field goal. Otherwise, at that point, they should be up by 3 if they didn't miss the previous field goal. So it was just, did you notice the third quarter was just 2 drives?
Yeah.
Texans chewed up 10 minutes, and then the Chiefs' subsequent drive chewed up 7, went into the fourth quarter.
Yep.
I was looking at the drive chart thinking, wait, what happened to the third quarter? Like, oh, it was just 2 drives. Like, it was the entire third quarter. And I had a couple thoughts here. Man, I had a lot of thoughts about this game. As this game was progressing, I had this thought that I don't think you can coach to be in a ball control rock fight game against the Chiefs. Even though the Texans played, besides self-inflicted wounds, the Texans played a pretty solid game. They were moving the ball, 150 yards rushing. You'll take that every day, right?
Yeah.
But I think somehow that doesn't work against the Chiefs. I almost think you need to play a high risk, high reward, all attack defense, all go offense, almost like the Detroit Commanders game. It's almost like you got to do that. Like, you just have to go balls out, because it's happening so often I don't think you can win a rock fight against it. Just doesn't look like it's possible. And their defense, I don't know if Spagnuolo just waits around until he's like, oh, okay, fine, I'm doing it now. But at some point, they just get sacks at will. What did they have? 8 sacks. 5 of them were in the second half. 4 of them, I think, were on the last drive. Yeah. The last meaningful drive, anyways, for the Texans. And they were landing those at will. Like, when he was sending pressure, it was just getting through. I mean, the most glaring, like, being out coached or idiotic offensive coaching call was trying to block Karlaftis with Schultz and then chipping with the running back.
That was a mistake. That was a blocking, like, they had a play in mind. It had to go a certain way, and then they you would call out the blocking, and that was a mistake. No, and so to your point about the 8 sacks, it really felt like Houston, they figured something out where, like, the medium pass game was open or something like that, which takes time to develop. And then Kansas City realizes, like, well, he's going to be sitting back there for a while. And then that's why he was sacked so many times. It felt like, because they knew that they would get to him. What would have been, like you said, like, you compared it to, like, Washington Detroit game. I think if they went no huddle or did some more of the quick pass options, would have been necessary, because he looked like he was, they were getting too much pressure on him, like with the
whatever it was. Yeah, obviously, here we are questioning coaching. It doesn't really. Obviously, they're NFL coaches for a reason, and we're not. But man, when the
I'm just speaking as a fan.
I know. I understand. Like, it's like, is there nothing else you can do?
That's right. He's standing there getting killed. Like, do something else. But you're absolutely right. Like, they obviously, know what they're doing and stuff.
Apparently not, though, because Karlaftis spent the entire second half in the backfield. It was unbelievable. Now, I listened to Nightcap, and Shannon Sharp said it should work that two men, Schultz and the running back, a tight end and a running back, the 2 of them put together should be able to block a guy. I don't think so. I was watching JT O'Sullivan, and in his opinion is that's an NFL defensive end, and a good one.
Yeah.
He can beat an O tackle with a chip, let alone a tight end with a chip.
Yeah.
And it was a pathetic effort. Unless we're talking Dalton Schultz. He's a good player, but unless you're known as the best blocking tight end in the NFL, like maybe George Kittle, and then right behind him you have a real gamer of a pass blocking running back. I'm not saying Mixon isn't, or I think it was Mixon on that play. Whatever it is, that guy's been getting by your tackles. You think you're going to stop him in this game? He's beating your tackle. You think, oh, okay, he can go right past our tackle. Let's stop him with a tight end. Like, what are they thinking? That stuck out to me, like, badly there. I was like, oh, it's like okay, so this is the thought I had. X's and O's aren't X's and O's. Like, if you just draw it up saying this X is going to block that O, but if your X, who cares who he is? If the O is Myles Garrett, that X is not blocking that O. You have to do something else. And And
and multiple coaches have said that too, right? Like that, and people all over the world. So like the NFL is a player league, right? This is a personnel. Like that's what separate, when you're that big and that fast, like Myles Garrett, you're a separator from other people.
Yes.
And like that, and just like how Kelsey was in his prime too, although he looked like he did this game, where he was wide open and getting yards after the catch, right? Like that's a difference maker on the field, right? So, and Karlaftis, who I've heard of before, I've seen him play before, but that he looked, this is the best I've ever seen him look, like by far.
He's been pretty consistent.
Game record, yeah. So
he's been pretty consistent. Chiefs fans probably can confirm this. He's been pretty consistent, but I think he's from the national media. I think he's kind of in Chris Jones' shadow a little bit. Okay. Like obviously, Chiefs fans know exactly who's doing what on that team and can vouch for Karlaftis and be like, yeah, he's been great all year. Yeah. But man, he's just jumped off the screen in this game.
Yeah, he had 8 sacks all season and 3 yesterday.
Yeah,
right.
That was good.
But
that defense
we'll have to lean on Looney Farm guy to tell us.
Yeah, but that defense is just. I mean, I think Kelsey and Mahomes suck a bit of the auction out of the room on how good this defense actually is. Like this is. I would put this defense up there with the Ray Lewis Ravens. Like this is that good of a defense that it just every game it's them running the show. Yeah. And for some reason in the second half, they just turn it on. And maybe he's adjusted to the point where he's calling the other team's bluff on what they think they're going to do. But I mean, the frequency with which they were getting to the quarterback at the end there. I mean, they had 4 sacks on one drive, 4 or 5 sacks on the final drive, and the drive that sealed the game. They were just getting through like just water going through a sieve. It was unbelievable. Yeah. And I kind of had the thought, why didn't you just do that all game? But obviously there had to be adjustments, I guess.
Right. No, and just some credit to the Houston coaching staff because, we crapped on them for trying to block Karlaftis with a tight end and a running back. But what I will say is that in the coming out of the half, having a long sustained drive against Kansas City is amazing. So like that was an amazing adjustment, plays they put together, execution, to be able to do that was amazing. But then Kansas City's defense rebounded because that, like you said, in the fourth quarter there, they were getting way too much pressure.
I think
Let's
they
talk
lost
about the penalty. So there's a lot of controversy.
I just want to finish that. I'm 100% about to get to the penalties. I think they lost the game in the third quarter after 2 things: not getting the extra point, and then immediately giving up a 7.5 yard drive back, and Kansas City got a touchdown.
7.5 minute, you mean? Yeah.
What'd I say?
Yard.
Oh yeah. 7.5 minute drive, and it was a long one, whatever, 80 yards, and immediately took all. I mean, on top of the missed extra point, took all the momentum back. And that was, and to me, that was it. It was like you just gave them your best shot and you kind of screwed it up with the missed extra point. Then they just marched down. It was over after that. And then it was on for the Spagnuolo's defense was just all over them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. No, and you're absolutely right. The missed extra point was a killer. Having Kansas City have a long sustained drive after that, and how it ended, where Mahomes makes more throws that you absolutely should not throw as a quarterback. One of the notes I had written down there is that he's set quarterbacking back 20 years because like young people are going to do that. It's kind of like Steph Curry in the NBA.
Yeah, don't try because you can't do it.
No, it's just like don't start shooting from the logo and the half court and stuff. And he was, when you're getting tackled or being pulled down or when you can't set your feet, you really shouldn't throw the ball late over the middle. And the guy had him by the ankles. He was jumping forward and falling down, through a fantastic pass to Kelsey for that touchdown, right? To get it, which was unbelievable. And it was, the defender was almost had it, but didn't. And then that was,
I think Goff pulled off one of those too.
I know, but it's
it's rare. It's rare. You don't teach kids this. Kids should not be thinking, I'm going to do all of that.
No. And most of the time, more often than not, it's intercepted or batted down or, key turnovers, right? Which but anyway, so what do you think about the penalties?
All right. I got to try to thread the needle here because Chiefs fans don't want to believe that they're being favored. I don't think they're necessarily being favored, but boy, does the rest of the country think so. So I'm going to try to present this argument on both sides. Okay. So, I mean, the Chiefs get the shirt because they won, and this is the game. Obviously, the Texans, we wear the shirts of the teams in the game that we're talking about. Hey,
Barbin called 2 bets on this game, won both. He gets the Chiefs shirt.
You're damn right. I do whatever I want because I won both bets here. All right. So, I think, okay, so I have some notes here. I think the roughing the passer call has to be, in general, in the NFL, has to be A, reviewable, and B, in the offseason, the competition committee has to scale back on whatever it is that they're doing to try to protect the quarterbacks here. Mm-hmm. The calls on Mahomes notwithstanding, this happens to everybody. If you touch the quarterback even slightly after or even during him passing, and it even kind of looks anything other than a two-hand touch, maybe, I don't know, in the chest, it's going to get called. Yeah. But the defender has to go in aggressively in order to hurry up the pass in the first place. So what's he supposed to do? Like slow down, be like, oh, okay, I got him. I can kind of hit him right in the number, but I'm not going to hit him with my helmet, but I got to make sure it's with my shoulder. But if he goes to the ground, I can't really land on top of him. And I'm not talking about Mahomes at this point. I'm just talking about all defenders against all quarterbacks. This roughing the passer thing is getting completely out of hand. Specifically in this game, Will Anderson didn't hit him in the head at all. It hit him like somewhere up in this area. Now, obviously, almost all hits, their faces look like they're getting very close, but clearly on replay, he didn't really hit anything up here at all. It was all here. Now, you could argue, well, he just hit him too hard anyways. That's bullshit. He didn't hit him that hard at all. No. And the ball was still in his goddamn hand when he touched him. So it's not like the ball was gone and he took that extra step. Yeah. He still had the ball in his hand. He should be able to cut him in half if the ball's in his hand. I know. And I don't mean just Mahomes. Every defender should be able to go right through every quarterback when the ball's still touching their goddamn hand.
Well, and that's what, but they're trying to, that's why they made the penalties like that, because there was some really good quarterbacks getting killed when they throw the ball. And they were injured, and then we get the backups in there, and then people weren't watching as much because they want to see.
I don't believe that for a second that they can relate that. I mean, Joe Montana won 4 Super Bowls without this type of protection. John Elway went to 5. Jim Kelly, like all of those guys, never had this kind of protection. I think this started somewhere in the Brady era, maybe rough 10-ish years ago, maybe towards the end of the Brady era. But if you look at film of at least the first 10 years of his career, Brady would just get crushed. And they didn't protect anybody.
Yeah. No, you're right.
And he went 20 years and won 7 Super Bowls.
Troy Aikman made a couple comments about that on this game.
Aikman never got protected. He won a bunch of Super Bowls, and he would get crushed all the time. Yeah.
So the one thing I'll make about the roughing the passer thing, what felt pretty egregious to me in this game was the one against Mahomes was not roughing the passer, and it was called, and the one against Stroud looked almost identical and was not called, right? And so that's my problem with this one. That's where I don't think there's a conspiracy or anything like that.
No,
but to your point, the rule has to be reevaluated and looked at again, and because that stuff like that can't happen, right? Where it's and we've talked about this before, when something happens and they go to the ref in the booth, and they're like, hey, Phil, what'd you think about that? And he's like, well, I don't know if I'd call that pass interference.
It's never,
and then on the field, they're like, that's pass interference. Right. And so it just shows you how subjective it was. And so I feel like that was on Saturday. That was another example of the subjectiveness, because it didn't feel like the Mahomes was, and I think even Aikman was like, "Oh, I disagree with that call," know. And then the Stroud one wasn't. So
I could see this devolving into an NHL hockey or lower hockey level thing where you send your goon out, and if you're not cared about a suspension or a fine, you just send out a backup defensive end and say, just take the quarterback's head off, and you'll get paid whatever you get paid. You're not like, why? If you're going to take a 15-yard penalty anyways, why not decapitate the guy? And I don't mean just Mahomes. I mean any quarterback. Why not do what Aziz Al-Shaair did to Lawrence? Just get rid of him. Get rid of him. Now, again, now we'll get to the foot first slide thing that I view should actually be banned from football. Yeah. But I can see, especially when players are starting to talk about it. Players usually are on board with each other because they're in their own little association. But when players are even coming out talking about, well, we know, you know what you're getting when you play against the Chiefs, that's a bad look for the league, for people in the league to actually. I mean, fans are going to have their conspiracies all the time, and they're irrational. That's what fans, short for fanatic, and that's fine, right? That's fine. It's kind of why it's fun, because you care that much about your team. But for people in the league to start believing the league itself is maybe not necessarily fair, that's bad. And I've actually never ever seen that in the NFL until like in the last couple of years. I've never seen commentators, players, even coaches starting talking about like something's clearly wrong here. I don't think there's a conspiracy, but I think the refs are so heavily weighted towards protecting the quarterback, but I don't think it's protecting anything. I think it's just making the game eventually unwatchable. Now, but if the ratings don't go down, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
But man, people seem to have a heavy distaste for the way things are being called right now.
Yeah, and I think for me it's more of the subjectivity part, right? Because if it's something subjective, then on any given game you could have 3 one way and 0 the other way because it's subjective. It's not an objective call, and then of course that would feel like collusion, right? If there's one team just happened to get the more penalties and it looks the same compared to the other, right? So it's terrible. So that to me is, that's why they have to fix it, because otherwise you don't want, like you said, it's a bad look and you don't want that to be going out there.
Yeah, and that's the other problem is the inconsistency from game to game and from call to call. And it's, man, I saw somebody comment like, why put up a replay when we can see how different it is on the replay?
It's a great
it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty bad. But these got to be challengeable, or someone even mentioned anything 15 yards, like a personal foul, to kind of get to the auto review. And some of these just seem so obvious, but so many of them are subjective. Something has to be done. I think people could get on board even the conspiracy theorists could get on board if the subjectivity was, you can't get rid of it, but minimized, at least somehow minimized, and quit promoting these quarterbacks to be fucking pussies and start being football players. Like it's getting worse and worse, where they've learned now the protections they have. And this game, Mahomes is smart enough to know how refereeing I mean, the quarterbacks in general are smart enough to know what they can and can't get away with now.
Yeah.
So when he geared down on the way out of bounds and then the guy shoved him, like Josh Allen does a little bit of this too, and some other quarterbacks, but it's like you can't choose to be an aggressive runner when you want to and then choose to be this weak defenseless quarterback when you want to. You're one or the other. And two times Mahomes kind of showed how easy it is to manipulate the rule. Again, I'm trying to be somewhat diplomatic here and not be a Chiefs homer and or a conspiracy theorist on the other side. But the best quarterbacks at scrambling have learned how to manipulate this rule. Do you remember earlier this season, I made a comment after a Ravens game, and I said something to the effect of, I don't think defenders know how to tackle Lamar Jackson anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think, now he's super fast and super elusive, but they clearly, as they get close to him, seem to not know what to do.
Yes.
And this game, yes,
I put Mahomes in that category too. 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. And they know it now. And when Mahomes was scrambling and then slid at the very last minute, you can't do that. You're either a runner or you're not. And the foot first slide in traffic has to be, you can't do that. You can't give yourself up in traffic.
I think you just covered it perfectly. When Mahomes has the ball and he's running, he can decide whether he's a defenseless person or a ball carrier at any second. So he can run head first and then all of a sudden be like, you know what, I'm just going to, slide right now. And then all of a sudden I'm defenseless, or I'm just going to try and get that extra yard. And now all of a sudden I'm just a ball carrier. And he can do that within less than a second. And the defender has absolutely no time to react properly to that. So, but last thing I was just going to say about that with the roughing the passer thing, it's rare now where I see a successful hit on the quarterback. Like it's either it's either roughing the passer or or they let up and they don't get there quite in time, or so really we're at the two-hand touch stage, right? Like that's right. Why don't you just go fully into that? Quarterbacks don't get hit, it's just two-hand touch.
Right, but to me that would lead to the goon thing where you send a guy, who cares how late it is in the play? How about this? Send an all-out blitz, but have a bunch of backups in. Right. One of them is going to get through and tell him, you're just cutting him in half no matter what. Ear hole him if you want, knock him out, whatever you want. Yeah. And then maybe that sends a message to the league like, okay, is this how you're going to call it? You're going to call a personal foul if we just brush past the guy. Fine, we're just going to take him out of the game. I just don't. it's not in the, it's losing its purpose now to protect quarterbacks. And now it's just causing people to be frustrated no matter what team they're watching. It's almost like as soon as a defense gets a stop, I immediately think, fuck, there's a flag. I'm for sure there's going to be a flag, and for sure this is going to be a roughing the passer. It's just so bad. It's so bad. And again, not just with Mahomes, but it looks worse when it's the best team. That it doesn't matter if it's the same on every team. When the best team, when it just shows up worse on the best team, I guess, because everyone's like, oh God, no one cheers for Goliath in the David and Goliath story. And right now the Chiefs are Goliath. So Chiefs fans appreciate the fact that you're the evil empire right now. That means you've ascended to the peak. But no one, other than Chiefs fans, no one wants to see Goliath beat David. That's just not. And just like when the Patriots were on top, no one wanted to keep seeing them win, including Chiefs fans. But now you're the Patriots, so relish in the fact that you've become the new Patriots. But
it's one thing when a team is dominant, and like you said, some of the Tom Brady years are also like Joe Montana or Steve Young, where they were they were really proficient on offense and would really beat teams, and it's something about that when you beat a team but the penalty, there were key penalties were the reason why sustained drives or drives were stopped or something like that, and then which just leaves not a good taste in your mouth for the rest of the fans. So
well, and also there was no social media. If people thought that, people couldn't share that thought right across the country. Either way, a dominant team in the era of social media with this weird new subjective referee initiative to protect all quarterbacks, it just all adds up to landing on a conspiracy theory that they're trying to keep the dominant team going, when in reality, I bet you every single quarterback, it's the same. It's just one team happens to be on top right now, so it looks worse when all quarterbacks are being protected.
Any other notes you have for the game?
Chiefs 177 yards passing, 117 went to Kelsey. 60 yards to the rest of the team.
What I will say about that was the Worthy catch. I think it was in the first half. Was outstanding. So that was that. He's young and he's got amazing speed. But man, if he can develop he has that kind of catch radius, then that he's going to be scary good. So
I say it all the time, and obviously this is not, it's much easier said than done. I just don't get how Kelsey's just perpetually open. And so my thought now is the new era of the NFL is the running quarterback and tight end era. But with that said, for at least 20 years now, it's been a quarterback tight end era. Like Brady always had an overwhelming tight end. And now this is just the evolution of that into another team that's winning all the time with an overwhelmingly good tight end. And so I don't know, somehow that's what the solution to whatever defenses are doing, it's QB tight end is the answer. Not a home run. Brady never had a home run wide receiver, and when he did, they did set the scoring record, but lost the Super Bowl with Randy Moss. But that's one season. He's had tons of great seasons, and it was always Gronkowski was how that worked. And when he had him and Hernandez, my God, two good tight ends, that's completely unstoppable. So it seems to be the solution on offense is QB tight end is the solution.
No, and you're right about Kelsey. He was 8 targets, 7 catches, 117 yards, and a TD.
I mean, some of them, there was no defender even in the picture. This is another one of the X's and O's things. Your X doesn't, the X of Kelsey and whatever O you put on him, that's not a normal X. They know, obviously they know this, but clearly they still, I mean, there was a particular play where Kelsey lined up at the edge of the line. So it's not like in the slot or anything. And then he chip blocked and then just released across and no one picked him up. And again, this is just an X's and O's thing. Okay, so the tight end's there. I'm like, no, right, stop you right there. That's Kelsey. That's not a tight end. That's Kelsey. Regardless if he looks like he's blocking, cover him anyways.
Right.
And they just lose. How do you lose sight of him? And then the one touchdown, Al-Shaair just didn't know he was behind him. If there's one person on the offense to account for, it's him. And who gives a shit what zone you're playing in? Their best player is right behind you, and I don't know, you're just covering grass. Maybe I'm making it sound too easy because it just keeps happening.
No,
it's just 117 of 177 yards just went to him.
Yeah. Now, what I will say too is that the Houston held Kansas City to 212 yards on offense. Like, so that's good. Like, you would take that every day.
But the 117 he got were the ones that beat you.
I get it, but like, it's the
I know.
The overall,
I know. There's arguments
crap
both
too
ways.
much on their defensive performance because I feel like it was good. So, but
it was, but it was clearly not enough. And their offense was, their special teams were horrific, and their offense just couldn't produce in the red zone was the real problem too.
That's
the
a really
Texans
good
just
point.
could not. They were, again, here we go. Teams going backwards in the red zone. They just, when it mattered most, they couldn't do it. So
no, you're right.
I mean, and you know what? And it's to be expected. They're not as good as the Chiefs. Now that defense is coming around.
Yeah,
it's getting
Anderson's amazing.
Anderson's amazing, but they have serious problems on the offensive line that need to be addressed over the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, good season for the Texans. That was, can't complain about making, especially after the rocky midseason got back on track, won another big time playoff game before they arrived here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too bad that they're down 2 of their 3 starting receivers halfway through the season, like Dell and Diggs. Yeah. So it's sort of, it's just too bad you trade for a guy and immediately he's out. So whatever.
No, Collins is good. Schultz is good, but they need a bit more balance there, and but Stroud looked good, he was, so
the other crazy thing I'll finish on the Chiefs is they still don't have like much of a rushing game to speak of, but it's weird for a team to not be able to rush the ball, but win rock fight games. It just almost doesn't add up.
And I've seen Pacheco look better before, so I don't know if he's battling an injury or if the offensive line is just not good at run blocking as they are pass blocking right now. But
the Texans D line is good, and it's good. Peaking right now.
So it was a little surprising to see how ineffective he was, but they didn't go to him too many times. He only had 5 carries, but it's surprising.
And your parking lot player Hunt was in there too. So
it looked pretty good. So he had a TD running, and he had some receptions too.
So anyways, Chiefs doing the Chiefs thing. It's just exactly what we thought would happen. It's exactly what did happen. And
now we want to see that defense going up against either Baltimore or Buffalo's offense. So
I guess before, that game hasn't happened yet, but the look ahead is, do we think this Chiefs performance can beat either of those teams? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
They have to do better than this.
Yeah, if they, the Kansas City's going to have to hold them to, very few yards in order to be in there for their offense. But we'll see.
We'll see. All right. Well, come back to the channel for our review of the Lions Commanders game. Catch you later.